You know, we live in a society that shies and speak badly about isolation. Isolation is not a bad thing. Now, there are isolation when you purposely, you don't want to deal with people at all because you can't stand people, you hate people, you don't want to bother people at all. That's not what I'm talking about. When you have that type of isolation, then you got a problem. You need to work on that, right? You need to work on that, seriously work on that. But the type of isolation that I'm talking about is, there are seasons when God would put you in a particular place. That place may not have been your number one choice where you want to live, where you wanted to go, or what you wanted to do. But there is something that God will begin to build inside of you as He puts you in that place. There is a reason why. When you look at Moses, when Moses ran from Egypt, Moses was in the desert, isolated from the rest of the world. Moses was talking to sheep. Moses was looking at cattle. Moses was looking at things from a different lens and a different perspective. Because Moses needed to get prepared for his assignment. So the 40 years that Moses was away, God used that time to sharpen Moses. One of the things that happened when you go through a season of isolation that is ordered by the Lord is God will begin to change your perspective. God will begin to change your heart. When you're going through a season of isolation, God would change your heart. Because when you're isolated, that is when you can begin to look at things from a different lens, from a different perspective that you have never seen before. When you are in a season of isolation, it's not a bad thing. God isolates you because He wants to separate you for preparation. And God will begin to change your focus. Isolation allows you to change your focus. When you're isolated, you begin to realize the things that are important. Sometimes when you live in a busy city, so much going on, you can't focus on anything. Because in the morning, things are going. In the afternoon, 24/7, things are always going on. So what God is going to do is, when He's called you to do something in this world, God will put you in a particular place. God will put you in a geographical place sometimes that may not have been your option. But there's a reason for that. Because you realize that when you allow the Lord to mold you in that place, when God sends you out to the nations, when God launches you out to different places, you are going to be sharper. You are going to be more impactful. You are going to be more influential because God is taking that time to train you. So when you realize that God is isolating you, don't complain about it. Because your complaining can extend your isolation season. God can decide to put you in isolation for 2 years to train you, to teach you. But because you start to complain, you have a bad attitude, you start to whine, God says, okay, 2 years just turn into 15 years. 15 years can turn into 30 years. When you look at the children of Israel, once they left Egypt, a journey that was supposed to take about 10 to 14 days. Listen to this. From Egypt to the Promised Land was supposed to take about 10 to 14 days. It took them 40 years. Why 40 years? Because they did nothing but complain for 40 long years. And it is so easy for people sometimes when you find yourself in certain situations that's not pleasant to you. You do nothing but complain about it. You do nothing but complain. And the more you complain, you're adding more time to whatever God initially had in mind. So if God wanted to do 2 weeks, every complaint, God add another week. You complain more, God add another year. You complain more. So that's why I tell you, when you find yourself in unpleasant situations, be joyful, be grateful. Say, Lord, I don't like this. this is not what I would have chosen for me, but God, I thank you. Lord, I bless you. Listen, when you have that type of heart, God will check and say, okay, this person, they're ready now for me to move on to the next stage. So you have people that are going through the same thing for decades and never change. And in closing, I want to give you a few things on how do you respond to warning signs from the Lord. There are 10 key things that I want to give you, and you can do more in-depth study with this, that you need to know how to deal with warning signs. So if you're getting warning signs, look, if you listen to this and you realize that you have 2 or more, that's a problem.